I'm smarter than a beaver.
Hey, you guys. Hey, you guys. Hey, you guys. Hey, you guys. Hey, you guys.
I'm Liam, this is Rob, and welcome to the Hey Guys podcast. This week, rather than our traditional look back at a movie from our youth, we're looking back at, well, a movie from last week. Could Prey possibly be as good as John McTiernan's original? Might it scale the heights of 2010's largely underrated Predators? Or are we looking at another colossal misfire in the mold of Shane Black's devastatingly disappointing The Predator? Oh, and before we move on, regular listeners might have noticed a change to our intro music. A big thank you to the very talented Alexander Ortolan for that. At this point, I'd usually provide a link for his work, but the mysterious Mr. Ortolan appears to have no online presence whatsoever. Rumour has it, though, he can be found on the streets of Edinburgh carrying a Nokia 3210 and a surprisingly intelligent pigeon on his shoulder. So if you do spot him, do say thank you. But as for the movie, it's only been out for a few weeks. I've only seen it once, but personally, I think this comfortably sits at second place on the list of Predator movies.
Before we go into... read your intro for me again. Just the part where you said about... Predators and Predator. What was that you said?
The underrated Predators and the colossal misfire of Shane Black's.
All right. So before we even get into Prey, right, we have to address something. Okay. Yep. The fact that what Liam just said is Liam's.
Yes, that is my opinion. I suspect, and I'm not gonna lie, when I did write that intro, I very much had you in mind. I was like, okay, I'm gonna get into his skin immediately. Because while I suspect we might be in a slightly different position on Predators, although I rewatched that for this podcast and I probably move closer to your opinion, we'll get to that in a second, I feel like the big difference is going to be Shane Black's The Predators, a movie which historically you've mentioned that you quite like, and a movie I really, really hated.
So basically, Predators, which I enjoy, is just a rehash of the original. We'll get more into that later, but that's my opinion. Mm-hmm. The Predator, they tried something. Granted, it didn't succeed, especially the ending. The first 45 minutes of that film, I still stand by. Boyd Holbrook is a really good lead.
I do like him.
Thomas Jane as some weird Tourette's guy.
Oh, that was a poor choice. I really like Thomas Jane.
Laugh at "fuck me in the face" with an aardvark. It's still one of the best lines. Like, at least they tried something. You have always said you do like people to shoot for the fence. I know this is the Prey podcast, but The Predator, I still stand by. They tried something. They missed, but I still enjoy watching that film. I must admit.
The thing is, I need to go back to it. My issue is, and you did mention it, I do like the idea of a movie kind of really going for it and not quite making it. And that film did try and do something different. I'll give it that. But a big part of this is expectations. You know, when you hear Shane Black, you know, whose movies I really enjoy, you know, famous for, you know, his really witty writing, is doing a Predator movie, my expectations immediately went through the roof. And then when I saw the film, it was really disappointing. Like, all the way through, it was disappointing. Maybe less than, it wasn't terrible all the way through, it was just disappointing. But that ending did tarnish everything for me. Yeah. And maybe if I go back and rewatch it and I just kind of watch it on its own terms and forget about the ending, perhaps I'll enjoy it a bit more, because I did like the cast, and it's not a complete misfire. There are elements which do work, but my God, that ending still gets to me, dude.
I mean, everyone remembers dessert, don't they? When you go out for dinner, the last thing on your mind is dessert. That's what's happened as you've left. So dessert being that ending, being that sour, I totally get it. All of a sudden, you've got a Guyver suit, and if nobody's watched Guyver, you're missing out.
No, it's not just that, though. If it was just you are bang on there, the Guyver suit's a great reference, but it's the fact that they built it up so much to the point where you're like, holy shit, is Arnie going to be? That's what everyone's thinking. They're building it up like, oh, dude, like Arnie's going to be there, or like fucking Sigourney Weaver was going to pop out.
There was Ripley. There was even Adrian Brody apparently was meant to be in there.
Dude, that would have worked. Anything. The way they built it up was like they knew they had gold, and you're like, oh man, this is going to be the business. And when that happened, honest, like if there was a table in the cinema for me to flip, I would have flipped that motherfucker. But to get back to your point, and we will get to Prey in a moment. Predators, I completely take your point that it is just a rehash of the first film. It's a decent rehash, though. Adrian Brody, I think, is a really solid lead. I think, one of the issues with Prey, actually, and we'll get to it, is the fact that the rest of the cast kind of fall by the wayside. What Predators does well, and what the original Predator did so brilliantly, is that the cast is memorable. Sure, some of the stereotypes are so on, like the Japanese Yakuza who doesn't speak, the Russian bear with his stripy shirt. It's almost ludicrous. I'm still not sure how I feel about Lawrence Fishburne showing up halfway through the film and just chewing the fuck out of the scenery. But that's another film where it doesn't stick the landing. The weakest part's the final act. I'm
going to go out on a limb and say I'm not including AVP because they don't fucking exist. No. But none of the Predator sequels are that bad. Why people give shit to Predator 2, I don't know. Predator 2, I think, is great. I mean, yes, if you look at Predator and you look at Arnie, and then you compare that to, unfortunately, Danny Glover. He's
a big old boy, though. But that is the thing, though, and it'll bring us back to Prey in a moment. Is that in terms of Arnie and the cast of Predator, there's nowhere left to go in that direction. You can't get any bigger. You can't get a bigger star. You can't get more muscles. It is just peak 80s action cinema. And of course, it is actually poking fun at 80s action cinema to a certain extent. Again, something we'll reference in when we finally do talk about Prey. But they had to go in a different direction. And for all the, you mentioned the fact that Predators is ostensibly just a remake. Predator 2, for all its faults, and it does have plenty of faults, isn't quite a different movie. I thought they took it in quite an interesting direction. When you go back and watch that film, it's got a decent cast. And like the subway sequence is genuinely amazing. That scene is fucking awesome. And obviously it brought us, it did lead to Aliens versus Predator, but it was one of the first kind of fan servicey kind of movies that I can remember when he goes onto the ship and it's got the alien head. So the fact of the matter is, you are right, there isn't a truly terrible Predator movie. But I'd also argue that until Prey, there wasn't actually a really, really good Predator movie other than the first one. So to bring it back to my initial point, while I think there's stuff to like about every Predator movie, I still think this is comfortably the second best.
The thing about Predator and Prey is these two films were about the hunt. Mm-hmm. No matter what you say about Predators, and Predator 2, they stopped being about the hunt and they became about how we can make bigger and better kills. Predator, definitely. There was no hunt there whatsoever.
It was just an action movie at that point.
The problem is, and I will admit it, the problem with the Predator then is, do you know what makes a film better? Get a bigger, badder Predator. Oh. Well, it's like playing Cards Against Humanity, where you got the bigger, blacker dick. But Predator and Prey, that comes back to the hunt. And that is what I love about Prey. Now, again, I mean, we say this before. I haven't seen this film for 20 years. I haven't seen this film for 15 years. I haven't seen this film for 7 days. It was more about the hunt. The whole hunting aspect, she's learning from every different thing that he does during the hunting. How she kills him at the end is because she's learned from every interaction. And I think that's great. Like, even Arnie didn't learn that much. Arnie fell into the mud and fell into how then. But Amber Midthunder, who brilliant in this
she's
film,
fantastic. She is brilliant.
She played Naru.
Mm-hmm.
Played by Dakota Beavers. Is her older brother.
Is that also an in-joke? Is that an in-joke? Well, at the top of the podcast, that famous, it's already a bit of a kind of famous line from the movie. I'm smarter than a beaver. The fact that she says it to Dakota Beaver, Beavers. I'm like, that has to be an in-joke, right? Surely.
Well, he's meant to be her older brother. He's 3 years younger. He's great, but she is fantastic.
Yeah.
And I'm not a huge dog on screen kind of fan, but the relationship she's got with that dog.
What an odd thing to say. You're not a fan of dogs on screen.
No. Do you know when people go, you can kill all the people in the world, but don't.
Yeah, absolutely. What's his name? Roland Emmerich specializes in this. We talked about it on Independence Day. He did the same thing in 2012. You're watching a scene where thousands upon thousands of people are being murdered, but everything's fine. And you actually, people cheered in the cinema because the dog survived. Yeah. So it is a trick. Whereas I don't think they use that trick in this film. I think it's just a really, like, you could make the argument that he's the best supporting actor. Is it Sari the dog? He's fantastic.
She uses him as a proper hunting dog.
Yeah. He's a member of the cast, for sure.
But she is so good in this. It's a bit sad to know. Well, I say no. It is an old school belief, isn't it? But sexism goes back 1700 years as well. Like all these people going, a woman can't do this shit. Look at what. And I loved when they were like, "Why do you need a string on your axe?" Like, fuck you. That thing is awesome.
Yeah, that is very cool. I mean, that's a big part of this film, and we will talk about the fact that this is, a feminist movie in the best possible way. And we talk about the fact that sexism goes back to, obviously, the early 18th century in the northern plains of, I was going to say the United States of Northern America. It's still obviously a problem here when you see some of the reaction. And I do think that most people watch this as a movie, enjoy it accordingly. But of course, you get the toxic side. I try not to pay too much attention to it. But what I loved about this film, and the reason that I think Naru will kind of sits alongside, arguably, your Sarah Connors and your Ellen Ripley's as these great feminist icons, is because her femininity is written into the script so successfully. It's not forced. Like, one of my least favorite moments of recent cinematic history is that horrendous attempt at a feminist moment at the end of Endgame, when it's like, oh, look, all the girls are in town. And it felt so forced and contrived, and it took me completely out of the movie. I'm not sure if you know the bit I'm talking about.
When
the bit when they're fighting Thanos.
Says, Captain Marvel, who's going to help you? And all the women show up and go, don't worry, she's got help. Yeah,
it's a horribly forced, horrendously written moment. Whereas this, her femininity and her role within society and the fact that she had to deal with these issues is all a natural element of the plot. And it even leads into how she survives the Predator. The fact that both the other Comanche in a tribe and the Predator itself underestimates her and doesn't see her as a threat. That allows her to survive. And that, you mentioned the fact that it's so brilliantly written into the script. The fact that she keeps learning. She doesn't fall into these things because she is a predator herself kind of thing. But that's what makes this, as I say, a great feminist movie, is the fact that it doesn't feel forced. And that's why Ripley was so fantastic. And again, Sarah Connor, because it didn't feel like a message movie. It was just fantastically written. It was female leads in movies.
It's just them doing what they have to do. If you put a guy in this, it's the exact same way. They just doing what they have to do.
You just have that additional layer of narrative in terms of her not being accepted by her Comanche tribe.
Yeah, I totally agree. Joe, you said something as well about the fact that she survived and she did so well. It's a bit bittersweet, though, isn't it? When you realise that the pistol, the flintlock pistol, is the same pistol from Predator 2. So is it a bit bittersweet that sooner or later the Predators get that back? So
that is kind of hinted at in the end credits, isn't it? There's those
animated ships rock back up.
Yeah. So there is wait, do they just show up and just batter over? I'm not sure if that's going to happen, because if you remember, because that's certainly one way to perceive it, but if you think about the end of Predator 2, if we go back to that movie, at the end, once he's defeated the Predator, 3 Predators show up, and he thinks, oh, maybe it might even be more.
Oh, there's more, mate. There is more.
Oh, yeah. And he's like, oh, I'm fucked. But what they're actually doing is showing up to congratulate him, essentially, and give him that as a gift. So I'm not sure if they come back down almost to kind of congratulate her, and she gives them the gun. I don't like the idea of the Predators coming. I just don't think it's the Predator style to come back and be like, oh no, we're going to get.
It's hinted at that this is the first hunt on Earth. So they've probably hunted elsewhere throughout the galaxy. This is the first hunt on Earth, and a Predator gets killed. Maybe then it becomes a fabled weapon. This is the weapon that killed. A Predator killed one of us, so we have to have this weapon. Whether or not
it didn't kill him, though, did it?
It led to his demise.
It led to his demise. Yeah.
So
I mean, it could be something
led
like
to
that.
His demise. So
yeah.
It could be then in Predator thing. It's law. So maybe it's passed down from
like a World Cup trophy.
Sorry,
like a World Cup trophy.
Yeah.
Like they keep hold of it until they get killed, and then they pass it on to someone else. Maybe it could be. I mean, and that is the thing. Like in terms of the timeline, we are going to, ignore the other Aliens films. Is this now the new starting point for the series? From here.
Did you say ignore Aliens films? Did you mean ignore Predator films?
Aliens versus Predator. I do apologize. This has been a massive hit on Hulu. It's been a big hit on Disney. I'm going to get into the fact that it wasn't released in cinema and what an absolute disgrace that was.
You know why that was?
Why is that?
So obviously this was set to be filmed when it was still 20th Century Fox. And when Disney bought 20th Century Fox, there was a deal in place to have it as a limited theatrical release and then release on a streaming service. But when COVID hit, the merger went through a bit quicker or something like that, I think I read. It just went straight. Disney just released it straight to streaming.
Well, I don't care what the reasons are behind the scenes. Like, it's still an absolute disgrace.
It is a travesty.
Like, the thing is, you watch this movie, and of course, I'm going to forget what my initial point was now, but it's very. I don't think I've ever watched a Predator movie, and within 2 or 3 minutes, the thing that jumps out to me is the cinematography. Jeff Cutter, who's the cinematographer on this, who did 10 Cloverfield Lane, another of the director's movies, and Paul with Simon Pegg and Nick Frost. A surprisingly decent-looking film if you go back and watch it. This isn't, a traditional, as much as it's got in common with the original Predator film. Like when you see, and you can see it from those opening wide shots of the Great Northern Plains, you're like, this is a beautifully shot movie which deserves to be seen on the bigger screen. And it's actually, if you think of the original one being like a pure B movie taken to like, the greatest of heights, it's got more in common with like a Comanche Western than it does a B movie. Like, tonally, what this film reminded me, maybe it doesn't kind of hit the same levels of violence, perhaps no movies do, is something like Bone Tomahawk, which the first half, say you didn't know it was a Predator movie, it was just called Prey, and you're watching it, you didn't know anything about it. For a good spell of this movie, you'd be like, wait, is this just a Western? And it's shot accordingly in the same way that Bone Tomahawk for the first half, and if it's a film you haven't seen, Jesus Christ, give that film a go, but be warned, when it turns, it gets nasty. And obviously the second half of that film becomes a movie about cannibals and like almost absurd levels of violence. But like that movie, this film is treated largely like a Comanche-led Western. And because of that, it allows it to be a much more beautiful film than the other films in the series. Like, I went back and watched Predator 2. I went back and watched Predators. Perfectly decent movies, not particularly gorgeous to look at. Like, the first 10, 15 minutes of there's like a handful of shots where, like, Jesus Christ, this is like Oscar-nominated kind of material here.
Well, what I love about this is it is meant to be untouched land. So it all looks stunning. The open fields, the forests, they're just so green. But
they really do lean into it, don't they?
Skies, because they haven't been ruined by fucking pollution or anything like that.
Well, the thing is, it lends into this idea that, despite the fact that you know where this film is going, it's in no rush. It's super pared back, this film. And even though it's, an hour and 45, whatever the hell it is, it's like, it is in no rush to get to the Predator. It's in no rush to get to the fight. The characterization is kept to a minimal outside of Naru, which is arguably to the film's detriment. We will get to that in a moment in terms of things that don't work. But I love the fact that this film is confident enough in itself. And the director, Dan Trachtenberg, who did 10 Cloverfield Lane, another fantastic film. He's done a lot of TV, like The Boys, Black Mirror, Portal and stuff. I think he's doing the Waterworld TV show, which will be interesting. He had the confidence to say, listen, we're just going to take our time with this. We're going to, show off this beautiful part of the world, and we're going to slowly build up this character and her place in the world before introducing the Predator.
You have to do something different. You introduce the Predator in a different way in the Arnie film, whereas you're just introducing this thing jumping from tree to tree. It's a bit camouflaged. Then you get like Predator 2, where you see the Predator pretty much up close, and then the rest of the films, then you know what to expect. So this thing, they had to strip it back. It is definitely a slow burn, but it works so well. You know the Predator's out there because you know the story of a Predator.
They go on the assumption everyone knows what the deal is. Yeah.
So you know sooner or later he'll have his moment. He'll camouflage, and that's it. But fuck me, the introduction of the Predator by stripping the bear. And then the blood just dripping down in.
That's badass. And again, that shows a confidence which the other directors of these movies hasn't shown, because everyone's like, well, everyone knows what the Predator is. And I think everybody immediately went to the Aliens approach. Like, Alien was all about this slow reveal of this creature that nobody really knew anything about. So, of course, you get to Aliens, and he's like, well, We already know what an alien looks like. Let's just throw tons of them at the screen. And they ostensibly did that to a certain extent with Predators. And obviously with the Predator, they're like, oh, we'll do like the Alien Queen equivalent and just make a larger Predator. All terrible ideas. But what that ostensibly turns those movies into are action movies because it removes all the horror, all the tension. This movie goes, no, we can still make the Predator scary. Just make him so he's a hunter. The only thing I will say is, well, he is a hunter to a certain extent. It's somewhere that the movie falls down in comparison to the original Predator movie. And of course, the original Predator movie is held in such high regard for a reason. But the two things where this film has an issue is that at one point I was like, I don't think the Predator in this film is actually a great hunter. He's a bit clumsy. There are certain points where he's just having a fight. Like, he doesn't hunt the French trappers. He just has a fight with them ostensibly sorry, I keep saying ostensibly. With the bear, as great as that scene is, he doesn't hunt the bear. He just has a wrestling match with the bear. Yes, it's cool, but I'm like, he's not being much of a hunter. He's just getting into fights. Everyone knows where the Predator is. He's just stronger than everyone else.
I saw it as, this is his first hunt. But also, I did see it as well, again, going back to possibly the first hunt on planet Earth, because he's building up. Start off with like the rattlesnake, kills a beaver. Does he kill a beaver? Maybe. But he's killing all these smaller and smaller animals.
Yeah.
Because he doesn't know that man is the best hunt, as it were.
He's just hunting what's there. He's just testing his skills.
Anything that moves, Did you like, speaking of anything that moves, did you like the nods to a couple of the other films? Like, if it bleeds, we can kill it, and I often like. I got to be honest. My favorite.
Felt they were a bit. What I liked was the gun nod. The gun nod is a nice deep cut for fans of the series because you have to have seen Predator 2. You have to remember Predator 2, and I was like, that's a cool little nod. I don't feel, and they did the same thing in Predators. At the end, I mentioned the fact that the end of Predators is actually the weakest bit, and you have. Adrian Brody covered in mud, and it's like, do it now, kill me. Yeah. And they do the same thing in this. She doesn't deliver the same lines, but she does the, do it now and all that. And of course, there's the if it bleeds, we can kill it. I think the delivery of the first line, that if it bleeds, we can kill it, is actually delivered quite subtly in this film. And under the radar, it doesn't make a big deal out of it. But I could do without it. I don't think you need those lines. I liked the gun thing because it was a cool little nod without really kind of, like you say, feeling shoehorned in. Yeah. Where, although you could make an argument that one French character who gets his leg chopped off is only there to deliver the gun. They were like, listen, we want to put the gun in this movie because the timelines kind of match up. So we're going to force the gun into the narrative and we need a character to do this. I don't think that character necessarily exists unless they have the whole thing where we want the gun to end up in Naru's hands.
But that kind of leads to my favorite nod. You said your nod was the gun. My nod is in Predator with Arnie. He's covered in mud and it's like, he can't see me. In Prey, it's he can't see him because she uses the orange flower to cool his blood. And the Predator. So that's why the Frenchman's there. It's for her to learn.
I'll give you that. Yeah,
it's for her to learn that, okay, well, the Predator can't see him.
And it's a cool death as well. When the Predator just accidentally steps on his leg when he's pretending to be dead, that's pretty badass.
Because it's like, he can't see him. Don't move, you'll be fine. Oh shit! Stood on my stump.
I know, right? But that does lead me to my other big issue with this film. And just to be clear, despite these issues, I did really enjoy this film, and I think it does provide a great template going forward.
I wonder if your issue is the same as my issue.
Well, the one is, as I said, the fact that I think the Predator is actually a little bit clumsy, and the actual Predator aspect. You think back to the first one where he really does pick them off one at a time. But the reason that works so well with the first film is because the cast is so memorable. The fact that 35 years later, why do we all know the name of Hawkins? It's amazing that they made the guy. He's the guy who dies first. The guy played by Shane Black.
Every character. I know the name of Hawkins is because my fucking son dressed as him last week.
Yeah, you should see the pictures. His son did dress like Hawkins. It's absolutely insane. But we still remember all those characters, and they all had memorable deaths. In this, I think the movie realizes, because, and again, you're paying the price for the emphasis being on Naru, which isn't a mistake because she's fantastic. But other than her, obviously her dog, and her brother, Tabe, no one else really lands. Like the other hunters, there's like the dude with the red feathers. There's the French trackers who don't really make much of an impact. And basically, when they're all getting killed by the Predator, you just don't care. Nobody's going to be talking about those characters 20, 30 years from now. So other than like maybe to get the only other character he lands is her mother, and she's not involved in the action at all. But because those characters, you have no they have no impact on you, and you have no real interaction with them on a character level. When they get killed, it's just for the sake of them being killed. It's just to show off the Predator being a badass. So it just becomes a collection of increasingly impressive death scenes with no narrative impact, which is something that actually, one of the genius things of the original Predator was having those moments with the team before the Predator shows up, like having them fighting the guerrillas in South America and them shooting everyone down. So everyone has their quips, everyone has their moments. So you know the team, so that when they start getting killed off, it means something. It's the same with Alien. The greatest examples of this genre, they often spend a lot of time with the wider cast. So when they do get killed, you give a shit. In this, as I said, outside of Tabe and Naru, you just don't give a shit about anything else.
I think you do, but you give a shit in a completely different way. It's like, all right, because me and my wife watched this last week. Oh my God, I stole your line. Me and my wife watched this, and we're watching this film. And there's a scene then where the guys are sent out to find Naru. She tries to get away from him, so they just beat the shit out of her for a minute, and then the Predator shows up. Mm-hmm. And then these three guys get taken out pretty quickly. And my wife's just looking and goes, deserved? Like, you're watching. The reason why they're there is to deservedly get killed.
Yeah, but that's completely different to when you just see shitey little characters and they get killed. You're like, oh, well, all they're doing basically on screen is justifying you feeling good about watching people get killed.
Yeah.
Whereas, like I said, the best examples are when you see these cool deaths, but you feel conflicted because you don't want the characters to die. The fact is, all those other characters, like you said, the other Comanche, the ones you don't like, the French trappers, who are all universally horrible, you're like, well, when they get killed, you're like, yeah, they should be killed. They're the worst. So again, you just don't care. And of course, Naru survives. So the only death that really has any impact in this film is Tabe. Because I felt for him, because he has that great action sequence where he almost takes down the Predator. He puts up a really good fight against him, but eventually gets killed because the Predator, a bit of a sneaky bastard, just disappears and kind of, doesn't want that one-on fight, because it's almost as if he's losing in that moment. Like, he might get killed, but then uses his camouflage to kill him. But that's the only death which really has any impact. Although I will say, and it brings it back to your point earlier about dogs on screen, I was glad they didn't use the cheap shot of the dog in peril. We think the dog's going to get killed, but he's fine. There's never really a scene in this film when the dog's in peril. It's like he's too smart for that, which I really like, because I assumed as soon as I saw Sari on screen, and they're clearly playing it up as a character and the dog's so cute, I'm like, I don't think they'll kill him, but they'll use it as a cheap ploy to get an emotion out of, viewers, as it were. It's like, we think Sari's going to die, but he's fine. A bunch of other guys get killed. We don't care. But in this, Sari's too fucking smart. He's never really in danger, which I thought was great. But this is a long way back around to my initial point about the new template for the Predator franchise, about the fact that this has been a big hit. Do you think that they will carry on with Naru's story, which I hope they don't, or do you think they've landed on the perfect template a la Assassin's Creed, in so much that they can now just take the Predator and move it to a different time period? We've seen 18th century Northern America on the Great Plains. We kind of all want to see 13th century Japan now, don't we? With samurai versus Predator. That would be amazing.
I do. But also, that is a great premise now. Moving forward, you're going to see you could see these ancient civilizations now taking on predators.
Knights versus Predator, Vikings versus Predator, shit like that.
Predators are meant to be terror. They're killing loads of people, okay, but they're always getting taken out by one person. Mm-hmm. Can we have one where the Predator wins? I
was just thinking the same thing. You want to do, and again, you almost think the noble nature of samurai. In my head, I'm almost thinking God, film it in black and white, Akira Kurosawa style. Yeah. Get a Japanese director, a Japanese cast, do it on a smaller budget, do a Predator movie where the Predator wins. They put up a good fight, but the Predator kills them all. That would be fucking dope. Do that movie for 10 million in Japan with a Japanese director, a totally Japanese cast in fucking Japanese. Honestly, how much press would you get if you released that online? People would go mad for it. I'm not saying it would make 100 million, but that is one of the big issues, and it's one of the big issues with Marvel. Everybody thinks in these ridiculous things now, our movies have to make hundreds of millions. It's about making a profit. How about making a 10 million Predator movie where it makes 40 million? Because I guarantee if you did it properly in Japanese, it would get so much press.
You know
so
what
much press.
I would do it Lone Wolf and Cub style.
Yeah, that's a great shout.
Yeah. So
that's a great shout.
So obviously he's going up against the Predator to save the cub, and at the end, Lone Wolf would die. But have the Predator kill Lone Wolf, but not the kid, obviously.
Yeah.
I would do a Lone Wolf and Cub style. You can do that on such a minimalist budget. It's insane.
Yeah, well, I would love to see them do a kind of smaller budget series of Predator films with it basically kind of going to different time. Because I'm like, we've seen what happens with Predator when you try and stretch it. Nobody really gives a shit about the Predator homeworld. Nobody wants it. When people think of Predator movies, they want to see a badass Predator hunting, preferably in the forest, and killing a bunch of people. I'm like, yeah, you change this to different time periods against different warriors. It'd be fantastic. And let's be clear, I don't want to see one next year. Like, Prey was fantastic. Give it a breather. Make the Japanese one 5 years from now. Like, that'd be absolutely fine. Well, as to whether we're going to get that, I don't know. But as I said, as great as Naru is, and as great as I think this movie largely is, I don't want to see a follow-up with Naru. Her story is complete.
You know what you need? You need that one link, don't you? Like, her story is complete. She did it. Right, I'm going off on a bit of a tangent now, because this is what leads me to what I didn't think worked, or may have worked with the film. The fickleness of the tribe. Like, the fickleness of that tribe is insane. You're a woman. You can't do it. Just go and hunt some orange flowers. Just that's fine. Let the men do what the men do thing. Oh, look, your brother's brought back the lion, even though he admitted to you that the reason he killed the lion because it was of your plan. But he's not going to tell him that. Okay, he's war chief. Okay, you've brought something back bigger and badder. Your brother's dead. Sorry about that. But now you're war chief. Like, this fucking tribe is fickle as fuck. Nobody seemed to care. I forgot my original point.
Oh, we often do that. But I mean, that just kind of, again, it all plays into the idea of this being this great feminist movie and why it works on that level, because it's so spectacularly, incredibly well thought out the way it's kind of implemented into the narrative. And it makes those bigger moments all the more impactful. You talk about kind of like, I mentioned the fact that they obviously went for this feminist moment on screen in certain Marvel films and it didn't work. Whereas in this, I think that like the moment when she finally killed the Predator and she lets out her Comanche war cry at the end, like that's a feminist iconic moment. That's up there with, say, something like Chloe Kelly whipping off a shirt when she scored in the European Cup final for the Lionesses. Yeah. Well, the reason that worked so great, because it didn't feel planned. It was just her in a moment of just kind of joy and, how great she was at sport and this fantastic moment, just almost this visceral moment. She just tears her shirt off. And it's the same in that final scene when she finally kills the Predator. And she just screams the Predator. I'm like, that's so badass. And there's a lot of reasons that Naru is fantastic in this film. But one of the issues we've mentioned with nearly every Predator film is their inabilities to stick the landing. In this film, despite the somewhat contrived nods to the original film, I think it really does. I think it really does stick the landing.
I remember my original point.
Oh, go for it.
So my original point is, this is Naru's story is done, but you have like the story of the flintlock pistol. Like in every film, that pistol is traveling, and then you get that story built up over a couple of films about how it ends up in the hands for Predator 2.
Oh, okay, yeah. So the Predator 2 legacy. Who thought we were ever going to get that? Well, which I thought was genius. The fact that it nodded back to Predator 2 of all movies rather than just kind of keep going back to the original movie.
Like you said, it makes sense to do that because the timelines sort of match up. But Predator 2 then was the one that initially gave us the idea of AVP, wasn't it? Like, yeah. You're in the spaceship and you see the alien skull. So
but that was one of the problems.
Has a lot to answer for, whichever way you look at it.
It does. But and that's why I kind of, in terms of where I want the series to go from now on, because the one thing this film is undeniably is pared back. And that is what the original film is, despite all the kind of 80s machoism and stuff and the fact that it does have a big cast, it is incredibly pared back. You don't find out anything about Dutch, really. It's just, he's the leader of this group of elite mercenaries or soldiers, whatever they are. And with this film, it's just like, listen, we don't need much narrative. Like, we just want, it's like you say, it's just about the hunt. It's about people or Naru versus the predator. And that's what it should be about, because every time they've tried to expand beyond that, what it becomes is an action movie. As soon as you remove the mystique of the predator, it just becomes another action movie. And I think we've all decided that's not really what we want. They've never been able to make that work. So, yeah, I don't think you need to have a huge number of sequels for this film, but, just kind of once every few years. But like, I guess the big issue a lot of people have with this film, or certainly the naysayers, and it goes to show that they've completely missed the point, not only of this film, but of the original Predator, is the fact that they seem to have an issue that Naru, that a woman, was able to defeat the Predator. But I mean, come on, guys, talk about missing the point. Like, the whole, like, if you go back and watch the original Predator movie, the whole point is it's poking fun at the excesses of 80s action stars. Like, they show up, and of course they're right off the pages of, Commando or something ridiculous like that. They've all got the muscles, they've all got the guns. But the point of Predator, the original movie, is that their muscles and strength are rendered useless almost immediately. Yeah. Like, you look at the final fight between Arnie and the Predator, his strength is rendered irrelevant immediately. Because, I mean, you see it in this film when the Predator wrestles a bear. Like, whether he's fighting Naru or Arnold Schwarzenegger, it makes no fundamental difference to the Predator, because their strength is of no consequence, their physical strength. If anything, Naru's in a better position because she's a smaller fucking target and she's easier to get around. But of course, nobody noticed that. I was like, oh, well, it took, like, Arnie killed the Predator by pretending ostensibly to be a wounded animal. There was nothing to do with his strength. And that is the whole point with this, is she is a predator, like herself. So her defeating the Predator makes actually quite a bit more sense than Arnie defeating the Predator.
All these predators get killed. Like, all these predators are just shit at their job, pretty much. But
they are. But my point being that the fact that she is a woman, or she is quite diminutive, is of absolutely no relevance whatsoever.
The people are saying that it says more about them than it does the film.
It does. But like you said, the film still goes out of its way to explain it in a brilliant way. The fact, I mentioned earlier, the fact that she is underrated, the fact that she is in this position because she's being overlooked to learn from the Predator's mistakes. And I think that's a great point.
That's not just her, though, is it? They've gone out of their way in the film to, it's not just her. It's the way the tribe sees things. The man goes out, hunts for the food, is the warrior. The woman is the forager. She goes out, she skins what her mum does. Her mum's actually cleaning the buffalo hide, isn't she?
Yeah.
When she comes back, she has to go out and get all the. She's a medic, for lack of a better word. And Naru is. She's there. She knows all the right herbs to use, the medicine, things like that. The orange. They say a lot. The orange blossom flower or whatever it was called.
Yeah.
So it's systematically already there, and she's trying to go up against the norm. So not only is she fighting these freaking trolls online, but she's also fighting it within the tribe. And I think it does really well. And man, woman, fucking child, it doesn't matter. It's a fantastic story of overcoming adversity.
Yeah, and what it does do, it's a great point about the fact that she's like a gatherer as well, and she's a medic. The reason that she is able to defeat the Predator is because she's a well-rounded character, because she can do both, because she is a medic, because she does have kind of access to these leaves, and the fact that she is a hunter. You feel like if she was just one or just the other, then she wouldn't have succeeded. The only reason she was able to succeed is because she's good at both things. But at the same time, this isn't like a Mary Sue situation, which is, I see kind of a term I see used online quite regularly about these female characters who can do everything. She is flawed. She has to learn her way through this film. She's not the perfect hunter straight out of the bag. And they prove that with her fight with the, is it a lion or a... It is a lion, isn't it?
Lion, they call her a lion.
Yeah, a lion, yeah. The fact that she's nearly killed in that scene. So you're going on this journey with her when she's learning to be a better hunter, learning to deal with the predator. So she's far from a perfect character.
Although there's no way her first attempt at a yo-yo axe works as well as it did for her.
Yeah, but it was so fucking cool.
It was cool. That was cool so badass. But she tied a vine around her axe, put it into a tree, Give her a little yank, that axe
Yeah.
flies back at her and she's able to catch it. She's losing a finger, she's losing a fucking hand, she's losing something. I'm sorry.
Yeah, you want to see some gloves on, for sure. The only thing I wanted to mention before we wrap up the movie is I thought they dealt with the Comanche element of this film so wisely, in terms of, okay, you can make the argument, and we've suggested here that, you know, you could make the next movie in Japanese. I'm not surprised that they didn't go for a whole movie in Comanche,
They have
They have. Oh, there is a Comanche version. Yeah, but in terms of releasing the kind of the initial cut in this, the only film I can think that's done something like that is what's the Mel Gibson film? Apocalypto, a film that I absolutely love. Which, fair play, say we put about Mel Gibson, that's like a lot of guts for him to do that, and that film was successful. But they went the 13th Warrior route in this, where they kind of give you just enough of the original language to kind of remind you that they aren't speaking English. And I thought that was quite wise. So
what I like about it,
and again, another nod to Assassin's Creed. They do it in Assassin's Creed, where you're hearing them speak in English, but every so often they speak in the mother tongue of whatever country it's in, whether it be French or whatever.
Well, see, I saw that differently. Where we're meant to understand Comanche, so we're in there. They're speaking Comanche, we understand Comanche. When the French trappers arrive, they're all speaking French. You can't understand a word they're saying.
Yeah. I thought that was wise.
Your Comanche. I like the fact they didn't decide to go down the Hunt for Red October route, where at the
where everyone's doing a Scottish accent. Yeah, that would be fucked up.
Well, at the beginning, they're all speaking Russian or Comanche, and then as the camera pans, it becomes English. Like that would have taken you out of it.
No, it feels a bit too enforced, whereas I think in this film it is more of a natural integration of the two languages, where they do speak it occasionally, but you just accept. It's almost like a little reminder every so often that they're not speaking English.
I don't remember them speaking Comanche.
There are a few moments in the film where they deliver just the occasional line here and there in Comanche, and it is literally just a line here and there.
Yeah.
But it's just enough, I think. And again, my comparison is to Assassin's Creed, where every so often you get it in the video games where they're speaking, you just hear it in English. Every so often you'll hear lines, whether it be people in the crowd or something like, you know, it's usually a kind of a narratively less important line will just be spoken in that language, just as a little, just be clear, they're not speaking English. But I thought they dealt with that really well in this film. And, you know, in terms of kind of, it's hard for me to say how well they kind of dealt with the culture and the history of the time, but it feels like they probably did their due diligence on this. And Absolutely. It's a great representation of the time. And again, so much of that comes back to the directing style and the cinematography, because again, this movie is so goddamn good.
I mean, they could have gone down the Sonny Landham route, couldn't they, from Predator? Where I think he's got like a pinprick of Native American in him, so he could be the Indian.
Yeah, well, that is the issue. And, you know, I mentioned at the top of the podcast about Predators, going back and rewatching it, is that some of the cultural interpretations are a little bit on the nose, should we say?
I mean, Danny Trejo is the...
Danny Trejo, and as I said, the Yakuza guy, the Russian guy. They might as well just put fucking Zangief in the movie as to just how absurd it was.
Walton Goggins as the prisoner, the white supremacist rapist. Like, the line...
He talks a lot about rape in that film.
When he says, when I go home, I'm going to rape me a lot of women. Like, what?
No, he says it about 4 times, man. When I go home, I'm going to do a lot of drugs and I'm going to rape me some bitches. You know what I mean? And they get to like Topher Grace, like, yeah. Like, in fairness, in that moment, they are aware how ridiculous it is. And whatever you think about Topher Grace, when he's like, oh yeah, I can't wait to go back and rape me some bitches. It's just like, it's such a ridiculous line, but awful. It is. Even though he is a horrendous character, and that's supposed to be the point, that's not getting in a movie in 2022.
No.
Just him having a monologue about raping bitches. It's just not happening.
No.
But yeah, like that film, the cultural representation is a bit clumsy. In this film, you don't get that. And as I said, I hope that they do really lean into this in the best possible way, because there's no way, after as big a hit as this has been, that it doesn't get another run out. I just hope that whatever the next movie is, if they go down this really cinematic route again, for the love of God, put it in the cinema. Because I would pay, even though I've already seen it and I can watch it on the TV, I would happily pay to go watch this film again on the cinema, because it deserves to be seen. Like, not only does this deserve to be seen on the big screen, I'd make the argument that this is suitable for IMAX. You know, this is an IMAX movie, not a fucking TV movie.
Our 2 leads deserve a decent career after this. Amber Midthunder.
Oh, I hope so. Yeah.
They deserve to go places now because they did so well.
If only so I can see Dakota Beaver on posters. Like, it's just the best name. But I don't even want to see Dakota Beaver. Like in the 80s, like if you saw a Schwarzenegger movie, it would just say Schwarzenegger.
Yeah.
So you've got like the movie title, and above it in big, bold red letters, it just says Beaver. Just like, oh, that'd be amazing.
There's a couple in this. So one of the other Native Americans his real name is Stormy Kipp.
Great.
The chief is played by Julian Black Antelope.
Again, I think we all secretly wish we were Native American in many respects.
But bless her, there's a woman, Aruka, played by Michelle Thrush.
Oh, that's not so great. The only other one is the Predator, played by Dane DiLiegro, a former basketball player. He's played he played the muscle monster of all things in Sweet Home, a Korean horror show on Netflix. I don't know much about it, but I thought he brought a unique physicality to the Predator, because I thought, looking back at it, the Predator actually felt a bit leaner.
Yeah.
Like, if you think about the way it's gone for, like, and I know we said we wouldn't mention Aliens versus Predator so much, the Predators became increasingly beefcake. They became bigger and bigger. Yeah. This was the kind of callback to this kind of leaner, more agile Predator. Because again, you've got to remember,
than the original Predator. I'm sure it's like
he's
about 5 or 6 inches less than the original. Which, I mean, as we all know, inches add up.
Yes, they certainly do. I mean, it's still the Predator's still big and he's still obviously very strong, but I like the fact that it felt like a different design, and not just obviously the suit, which, you got to remember, this isn't just 300 years ago for human beings. This is 300 years ago for the Predators. And you can see that in the technology, like the shoulder gun, it's not a laser gun. It's like a projectile, isn't it?
Yeah. At one point, you think he's firing crossbow bolts.
Yeah, that's what it almost looks like.
His mask is very primitive. It only covers half of his face.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And no, I like the fact that they, this wasn't just a purely human 300 years ago. They thought this out, and it gave the Predator a unique design while still feeling uniquely Predator. And of course, that suited the film very well, because we talked about the fact that it does have that slow burn. It is about the sudden reveal about the Predator. And of course, part of you think, well, I know what a Predator looks like. But when you see it in this film, you're like, well, I didn't know he looked like that. Even when he took the mask off, it looked, and they have mentioned this in other Predator films, the idea that, I think it's a big part of Predators, that there are different tribes, that there are different styles of Predator. And obviously in the Predator, there's that ridiculous giant Predator. But I like the idea that there's different races of Predators, and this was a unique one unto itself.
Absolutely. Sorry, I was just as you were talking, I was just looking at the cast, because we've already talked about a bunch of the cast. I love what they've done as well, just to keep the language barrier in line, things like that. Mm-hmm. The French trappers, they're credited as well. They haven't got names, except for obviously the guy who's lost his leg. His name on the flintlock pistol, so he has to be named. But you've got Mike Patterson played Big Beard.
Yeah, Big Beard was the one who stood out. They were the one. He was the one they were kind of trying to make a character for sure. And
Nelson Lee played Waxed Mustache.
Oh, that is a great one. That is a great one. Waxed Mustache, Jesus Christ. So we'll end Prey on Waxed Mustache, because of course we will. And before we move on to Love and Hate, is there anything else you wanted to add about the film?
No, I think I've covered as much as, and I think I've got it on record now that the Predator is not as bad as you make it out to be. So
maybe I need to rewatch it. But again, of course, it's this podcast is going to be as much about Prey's place in the Predator series as anything else, because like everyone else, we've only just watched it.
Prey's place, we've already. I mean, I can't shine any more good light on this film than I already have. Like, it's done so well. It's so minimalist, and I've said that a couple of times on this episode now. The way they've approached this, but it's so good. And I would like to see now, but I would like to see them move through now, like you say, maybe a samurai one, things like that. But maybe don't water it down like superhero movies have for us at the moment.
Oh no, we don't want to. Like I said, we don't want too many. We don't want it to be overdone. We don't need to see another Predator movie for a few years. We certainly don't want it to be anything other than an 18. It absolutely needs to be. We don't want to see another Aliens versus Predator 12A or anything like that. So hopefully they'll kind of do right by the series and give it a bit of time to breathe, because there's no need to rush out a sequel. But there's always the fear that's exactly what they'll do. But we'll see what happens, I guess.
Let's go to the loves then.
Loves, I suspect we're going to have a very similar list here, but Naru, Amber, Mid-Thunder, I think this is an immediately iconic performance. You know, the whole film, it really is about her, and she holds the film perfectly, her and obviously Sari the dog. I've mentioned it a few times, but the cinematography by Jeff Cutter, it's recognizably a Predator film, but it feels like taken from a different genre, despite the fact that structurally, it's a very similar film, but the way it's shot, it feels like it almost belongs in a different genre. As I said, like more like a Western rather than a B movie. Yeah. And again, to reiterate your point, I love the fact that it's so pared back. This is a narratively lean movie, and I think all the better for it.
Well, I can't disagree with any of them, but I do have a few that are different. Obviously, Amber Mid-Thunder's Naru. She's fantastic, and it's a starring. It's not obviously it is a starring role, but it's just
star-making performance.
Star-making performance. Thank you. Yes, the landscape I think it is beautiful. Like the rivers, the mountains, the forests, the field, everything about it. I think it just looks stunning. It's just
again, it leads into the idea of the first film. Like, you know, obviously we all think of Arnie and the soldiers and stuff with the original film, but the jungle was as big a part of that movie as the stars.
In that looked cluttered as well. The jungle it just looked. Yeah,
well, this is a different world, but I think that the emphasis on the surroundings and the landscape being such a big part of the movie, and of course you don't want to just keep doing the jungle over and over again. They've already done that again with Predators. With this, it is a different landscape, but it's just as important to the narrative as the jungle was in Predator.
The stripped back version of the Predator itself. It wouldn't have made sense to have your armored Predator from Predator or Predator 2 in this. The fact that it was, I guess, some sort of native or primitive predator itself, I thought was, because obviously the whole thing about the predators, they're learning, they're always evolving in every hunt, in every timeline. So so this one I thought was really good. The stripped back version of it seemed to play well against the landscape, against the Comanche people. So really good.
Hate, I've got down the fact that I think the Predator is a bit of a pleb at times. I don't think he's actually all that good at being a Predator. He just sometimes it feels like he just wants to have a scrap.
That's the point of the Predator.
Yeah, well, the first one though, he's up until the end, like the Predator does pick everyone off pretty successfully. Like, you know, he doesn't really reveal himself until the very end of the film when suddenly
they're meant to be an elite fighting force, but they're pretty stupid.
Yeah, they are pretty stupid. But yeah, I still think the Predator's a bit of a pleb at times in this film. The callbacks can feel a tad contrived. You know, the not the narrative, the dialogue callbacks in particular. Although I thought the gun nod was much cooler. I did quite like that. And I've mentioned it previously, but the rest of the cast, I think, can get a bit lost. You know, they essentially replace South American guerrillas with French bird trappers, but you know, whether it be the Comanche or the additional kind of cast members, they're just there to get killed, I thought. And as I said, outside of Naru and Tabe, I think everyone else gets a little bit lost, sadly. But that's better in terms of things I didn't like about the movie.
I'm with you on the narrative nods. I don't think they were needed. I mean, they didn't feel as good as the Predator when it was get to the choppers. You know, and they all ran to bikes. Do you remember?
Yeah.
No, the narrative nods weren't the best. Again, same as you. Outside of our two main characters, or three if you include the Predator, the rest of them just seem to have nothing to do except be there to die. It just seemed a bit pointless. I like the way the other Comanche tribe around them looked down on her and just treat her like shit, won't even listen to her. It just, I wasn't a huge fan of that. And as much as I said I love the look of him, I'm going to have to agree with you on the Predator. He was a bit stupid.
Well, yeah, as I said, you know, like going back to the original film, like for the most part, he's just taking down, you know, he is being a predator and takes everyone down. It's only at the end when he basically says, oh, this is the toughest guy, so I'm going to have a fight with him. I'm going to, you know, basically give him a chance. But in this, the Predator seems to give everyone a bit of a chance to get shot. Like a lot of people get, you know, hits on this Predator throughout the film with, again, comparatively rudimentary weapons.
Yeah.
But you think if anyone had, you know, if any of those French trappers happened to have an Uzi to hand, they probably would have cut this Predator down with relative ease. So, I thought he was a bit of a pleb. Facts, I mean, obviously, there's not going to be as many because this film's only been out for a couple of weeks. But do you have any to add?
Yeah, I got a few. The feral predator's biomask is made from the skull of a river ghost from Predators.
Oh, nice. River ghosts, are those one of the other alien beings? Because you remember they drop like a bunch of cages and they actually kill one of the other alien, like, you know, one of them goes out, like they think, oh, maybe they're being hunted by the humans, and the Israeli sniper takes out the other alien. So maybe it's one of those, I'm not sure, but I'd have to look back into it.
The movie was also released with dialogue that was dubbed in the Comanche language. There's also an English language version and a version with Comanche subtitles.
Okay, cool.
So they've gone like straight into the Comanche language.
Yeah.
I think that's really good. The rattlesnake could see the predator whilst invisible, as a rattler has pits on its head that allows the snake to sense heat and track prey through its thermal radiation signature, much like the predator.
That was pretty cool.
Co-producer John Davis said that he feels the original Predator was a wonderful, interesting movie, and I know what worked about it. He added, I feel like we kind of never got back there again. We ended up in different places. I think this is a worthy compliment to the first one. It's going to be as good. I mean, he's not wrong.
Yeah, I don't think you're ever going to recapture the magic of the original film, but, you know, me saying that this isn't quite as good as the original movie is, you know, it's not me being critical of this film. Like I said, I think I mentioned when we did the Predator podcast, I think it is one of the best movies ever made in terms of achieving what you set out to do. It doesn't have lofty ambitions, but in terms of elevating an art form or elevating a genre, few films have done it as well as Predator. It's been proved by the fact that very few movies have been able to match what that movie did so successfully in 1986, 1987, whenever it was. So yeah, in terms of a worthy follow-up, in terms of a movie that captures the spirit of the film, doesn't step on his toes, doesn't just feel like a retelling in the same way that Predators did. God, these titles are confusing. Yeah, I think Prey did a fantastic job, and it did take it took all the correct stuff from the original film, but managed to make it its own thing.
This is the first film, apparently, where the Predator never uses a voice box to mimic a character.
Which I guess maybe like leans into your idea. Well, one, it might not have had the technology at that point, and two, maybe it is its first time on Earth. So it's just kind of like it doesn't know what the dominant species is. It's just fighting. This is the first time we see a predator just fighting everything, like bears, snakes, a beaver, whatever it was. Also, the first film not to use the shoulder cannon, because obviously he had crossbow bolts at that point. So yeah. Same again, Predator, another nod we never actually said. The Predator gets its arm cut off with its own weapon, like in Predator 2. Surprising that. But again, why not Predator 2? You know, to bring it back to that point, Predator 2 is, I think people look back on it with disdain because I was like, oh, Danny Glover's not Arnold Schwarzenegger. But it's not a great movie, but it's a decent one. Like if someone said Predator 2 was like the third best in the series, I think you could make an argument for that. Plus, it's got Gary Busey in, and crazy Gary Busey is always fun to watch. It's got a great cast, And my final one, when Tarbé is wounded by the Predator, he is stabbed from the back. Tarbé is raised in the air. It's a visual image of the Sundance ritual. Tarbé could sense this was the end to his great red road, his life. So he made the sacrifice to his sister, family, and tribe. Yeah, I thought it was pretty cool. But yeah, I thought Tarbé was great in this. He's the other real standout in the film. In terms of legacy, mentioned the fact that it was a huge hit on Hulu, and obviously over here in the UK it was on Disney. I think it's like their most watched premiere or something like that. It will almost certainly lead to a resurgence of the franchise. We've mentioned it a few times. We just hope that they do it the right way. And a big part of that, in terms of the legacy, I hope it does lead to a more historical model. The fact that you can have it in different timeframes. We don't need to see South America again. I think legacy-wise, again, I think most people will see this as the second best movie in the series. I don't want this to be a case of recency bias. That's why I went back and watched Predators and Predator 2 again. I think Prey is comfortably better than those films, despite the fact that I haven't watched The Predator yet, have you? So you don't know. I will be amazed. I am going to go back and rewatch that because I am interested to see if it's not as bad as I remember. But that is the bar. Is it not quite as bad as I remember? There's no way I'm going to go back and watch The Predator and go, fuck, this film's amazing. Maybe it is better than the John McTiernan original. I'll give you that. It's not great. No. But it doesn't deserve the hate it's getting. Well, I will watch it again, and we can come back to that at some point. But yeah, I think its position as a great feminist movie, the fact that it has created a feminist icon in Naru. On previous podcasts, we've talked about how nowadays the use of women on the screen can sometimes feel a little bit clumsy, and most of the greatest female, certainly action icons, are all from the 80s and early 90s. Sarah Connor, Ripley. It's a shame that we keep having to bring up those characters specifically when we're talking 30, 35, nearly 40 years later. But, I think Naru does belong in that illustrious company.
Although I do think that because they were the strong female leads of strong female characters of our childhood, they're the ones we keep coming back to. For people
but
now,
who would the modern?
But for people now, it would be Captain Marvel.
Yeah. But they're pre-existing characters. That's a different thing.
Characters are not on screen. These are the strong roles.
Yeah, no, I'll give you that, but I don't think it's quite the same.
No, it's not. And we're going to argue. So I'm totally not.
No, I know what you mean.
We're going to argue the fact that strong female role models in action films or in cinema are Ripley, Sarah Connor, and today.
Or just well written. Like, they're not trying to be. They're not trying to force them as feminists. Like, they're just well written characters. Like, that's the thing.
If you get people to watch it now, if you get young females to watch it now, and then watch like the likes of Captain Marvel or any of they'll probably gravitate towards it. I'm not saying they will.
Oh no. I see what you mean. I see what you mean. But yeah, I think she's, as I said, it's an iconic performance, and largely I think what will become a relatively iconic film. I'm glad that it's doing so well anyway. But my big issue with the legacy of this film is that I hope that it does remind these companies that these movies deserve to be seen on the big screen. Let's not abandon, I think of some of the movies I've seen on the big screen this year, and outside of Top Gun Maverick, and, you could make an argument for Everything Everywhere All at Once, but that's not like a blockbuster movie in the same way, despite the fact that it's made 100 million worldwide now. This has been one of the most disappointing blockbuster seasons I can think of. It really is.
If you look, the fact that this wasn't released on screen, in cinema, but yet was it Resident Evil Welcome to Raccoon City had a theatrical release.
Yeah, and like I said, like the one thing, like going back and like within moments of watching this film, you're like, Jesus Christ, this is shot in such a cinematic way. It's shot. I can't believe that when directing this film, he wasn't thinking, all right, this has to be seen on the big screen.
Yeah.
And it's nice that so many people get to see it on Disney, and obviously there's a lot of people talking about it. But I still think it's an absolute crime when films like this don't make it to the big screen, and especially to your point, when films like Welcome to Raccoon City make it to the big screen, this doesn't. Absolutely unforgivable. In terms of the score soundtrack, by Sarah Schachner, I think is her name. Apologies if I've mispronounced that. But she's worked, funny enough, we've mentioned it a few times now, on Assassin's Creed Valhalla and Anthem, which has nothing to do with this, other than, it's got a lot of jungle, like the first one. Anthem, I think, is an absolutely massively underrated video game, by the way. I think it's a lot of people, better than people give it credit for. But to get back, I think it's a good combination of new and old. They didn't overdo the main theme. There's a bit of synth even in this, but it makes it kind of, despite me mentioning synth, it feels, time appropriate. And as I said, going back and watching Predators as I just did, the one thing you notice is just how clumsy it is with the use of music. It's like they keep wanting to remind you, this is a Predator movie, this is a Predator movie. Listen to the main theme over and over and over again. In this, it is used, but used a lot more sparingly. So even though you don't notice it as much because it's not so in your face as it is in other sequels, I think the use of both the main theme and of it, the more original aspects of the score is incredibly well implemented throughout this movie. And I think it's one of those things that people will pick out the more they go back and watch this movie, because quite often when it comes to scores in particular, it's the kind of thing you'll pick up on the second or third watch. Then you'll realize just how impactful it is, because, a lot of good scores, for instance, outside of, your big bombastic John Williams scores, is that they often fit quite comfortably in the background. And this did, to a certain extent. Like I said, they weren't forcing the what we would consider to be the Predator main theme upon you. So yeah, I think like so much of this film, they've taken the wise approach. Less is more once again. But the only thing I've got left is the video game section. So there have been a lot of Predator video games. Most of them have been shite. In terms of Prey, there obviously hasn't been one. But in terms of what I'd like to see, I think I've used it before as an example, but Rockstar, Red Dead Redemption 2, make it the DLC in the same way that they did Undead Nightmare for the original Red Dead Redemption. do a Predator-based. Obviously, you've got to move the time frame back. I think Red Dead Redemption 2 is set at the end of the 18th century, but excuse me. But why not have like these huge open plains? You know, you only have to remove some of the buildings. You could still set it in like largely the same location, only you have this like amazingly unique experience of you being able to hunt a predator or survive a predator over a huge landscape. And I think that'd be a really interesting, like much slower paced video game. Not for everyone, but you know, why not? It's DLC after all. So yeah, Prey, Red Dead Redemption 2 : Prey. That's what I would like to see.
I was with you, but I'm not Red Dead Redemption. I've mentioned this a few times, and I'll probably mention it a few times in the future. Horizon Zero Dawn.
Yep, that makes sense.
I mean, you've already got the female lead. You've got the female lead with a bow and arrow, make it primitive. And then you've already got the like with the animals and stuff. You've already got that like tech noir. In there already, so
no, I totally get that, and it was on my list when I was thinking of kind of a modern day interpretation of Prey as a video game. But the reason I went with Red Dead or DLC for Red Dead in the end is because, say, unlike Horizon Zero Dawn, a lot of, and you could say this about both Red Dead and Red Dead 2, some of its finest moments are when it's devoid of action, of when, you know, it's arguably at its best when it's quietest. And I think, you know, you could really lean into that with this game. Like a lot of the game would just be traveling across these beautiful locations. And if you really leaned into that and just allowed the game to be quiet, allow it to have these large moments without action, I think that's where it would be suited best. But yes, as an actual action game, I agree with you, because whatever you might say about Red Dead Redemption 2, the actual mechanics are often not all that brilliant. Whereas in, say, Horizon Zero Dawn, the actual action elements of hunting a predator or being hunted by a predator would actually work much better. So maybe a combination of the two, perhaps, if we can get away with that.
If in doubt, mix both ideas.
Exactly. So yeah, that's been pretty much it for Prey. Obviously, a strange look back at a movie which was only just released, and you know, please do bear with us, you know, because obviously we'll give these scores. There is, like, you know, we're trying not to be impacted by recency bias, but you know, these opinions and scores could change as we rewatch the film. You know, if we revisit it 5-10 years from now, but my immediate response is that this is comfortably a 4-star movie. It's not quite in the same league as the 5-star original, but this is a 4-star movie. It had everything that I would realistically hope for from a Predator prequel, sequel, whatever you want to call it. And as to whether I would recommend it to others, without question. I don't think you need to have seen Predator to enjoy this. You could just watch, like, that's another great thing about it. You just came to this, you knew nothing about the series, it would 100% work. Well, the nods are subtle. You don't need to know anything about them. This is a lean, mean movie. Sorry.
It's a good thing for a prequel. It's a prequel. It's the first one technically in the timeline. Watch this one first.
Well, that is the other thing as well. Like most prequels, the issue with them is that usually it's referencing events in the future or certain characters. So one of the problems becomes that nothing has an impact. You're like, well, you know, like if you're watching, say, Star Wars prequels, you knew Obi-Wan was going to survive. You know Anakin's going to become Darth Vader. And of course, part of the fun is in seeing how they get to these places, but it does remove all the threat from it, because you know they're not going to get killed. Whereas in this film, yes, it's a prequel, but it doesn't really have anything to do with the other films. So everything's just set back to square one, and there is the threat that everyone could be killed. Of course, we mentioned the fact that perhaps in the next sequel, they'll have the guts to have everyone legitimately get killed off, and the Predator will actually win for once. I'd like to think the whole point of this film is that you're not seeing those, like, there are a lot of instances where the Predator does come to Earth and wins, but we're only seeing the ones where obviously it's not much of a story if the Predator just rocks up, kills a bunch of people, and then just leaves. But you know, maybe we'll get that in the next film.
I mean, after nearly 7 films, don't you feel sorry for the Predator? Don't you just want him to go home, just head held high once?
Well, like I said, I like to think that there are a bunch of other Predators who are being successful and are going back home. But yeah, I don't think it would be a terrible idea to have the Predator winning one of these movies. How about you?
I mean, what he said, to be fair.
Oh, yeah.
Honestly, I can't. It's a 4-star film. I would recommend it, even if you haven't seen any of the others. It is a decent watch. It's really good. And yeah, I really enjoyed it. I thoroughly enjoyed my first and only screening of this film.
Yeah, I mean, we've mentioned before, haven't we, where we either 80% of the time we agree wholeheartedly, the other 20% of the time, Jesus Christ, it turns into an absolute war. And obviously, we did disagree on The Predator, but I'm going to rewatch that. But yes, this has been the Prey podcast. So 4 stars across the board. We recommend it. The only question is, what are we going to do next week?
So, A Time to Kill, The Client, Runaway Jury, A Few Good Men, all courtroom dramas, all giant POSs, compared to the GOAT of courtroom dramas.
POSs.
My Cousin Vinny.
My Cousin Vinny.
I fucking love My Cousin Vinny. Spoiler alert.
I think this is going to be a really interesting one because I've seen My Cousin Vinny, but I probably watched it in like 1993. What year was it released? 91, I think it was.
Something like that,
yeah, so I haven't seen this film in the best part of 30 years. I have relatively fond memories of it, but to say that they're relatively fond memories, I remember the vague outline. I remember there being a court scene. I remember Joe Pesci and Ralph Macchio in it, and Marisa Tomei in it, who I think won a Oscar for Best Supporting Actress.
Supporting Actress, yeah.
Which will be interesting going back and rewatching it, knowing that she won that. But yes, this is a shift tonally for sure from Prey. But I'm really looking forward to this one.
Do you know how I got to this film?
God knows.
So our artist Darry, he made for us a bingo card, and one of the lines on the bingo card was random 80s, 90s crushes. And as I was thinking about it, I thought, well, one of the biggest crushes I had was Marisa Tomei in My Cousin Vinny. And you will see why when you rewatch this film next week. I'm
sure. Well, Marisa Tomei, we could talk a lot about her because she has had such a weird and interesting career. So, yeah, we could do a whole section just Marisa Tomei, and that doesn't include, obviously, your huge crush on her from back in the day. But yeah, I'm sorry.
The legacy of Vinny, because we'll get into it more next week. But Joe Pesci brought Vinny back for an album.
Yeah. Which is, that's going to be something. Bruce Willis style.
Yeah.
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah. Good old
I'm literally going to have to go, before I even watch the film now, I'll be listening to Joe Pesci. Does he do it in... we'll talk about it next week.
Yeah.
All right, so please join us next week for My Cousin Vinny of all films. A film which is truly beloved and for very good reason, supposedly, although, I'll find out in the next couple of days. For those who do want to watch along, surprisingly enough, My Cousin Vinny is available on Disney+, so it's quite easy to watch for those people who have it. And, based on my memories at least, and obviously your already going review, it sounds like it's probably worth a look. So, yes, do join us next week for My Cousin Vinny. But thanks for joining us for Prey. Cheers, guys. Bye-bye.
Cheers, guys.
So where can people actually find us?
Oh, well, people can actually find us on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook at HeyYouGuys80s. You can also drop us an email at HeyYouGuys80s@gmail.com. We like to read them out on the show, so please feel free to send them in. Any recommendations, just get in touch with us. We do like that. And we'd like to thank, as always, Darry Fletcher at Darry Doodles for the fantastic artwork that we're now producing.
Cheers, Darry. And a big thank you to Alexander Ortolan for the awesome intro music. He has no media presence as far as I can tell. He's very mysterious, but makes great music. So thank you very much.
And we'll see you next week. Thanks for listening.
Bye. POSs. Hey, you guys!